It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
I've done a lot of work with an organization here in Los Angeles called Homeboy Industries, which is founded by a beautiful man, listen to me, you're the doctor, Father Greg Boyle, Jesuit priest. And these are the unlovable. I mean, it's very challenging. My first couple days there, for 2 years, I ran a group there at Homeboy. And my first couple days there, I was really having trouble with my own judgments, with my own, and if I'm honest about it, it's my own defensiveness, that what I didn't want to, I'm going to say admit, was that these men were just like me. The only difference is they made different choices. They didn't have this reservoir of, we can call it self-esteem, but I think you're more accurate when you say, this love that I had as a reservoir.
When you grow up with the love, this is a study of Harvard students too. If they said, my parents loved me in school while in Harvard, 35 years later, 1 out of 4 had suffered a major illness. If they said no, 98% had.
Yes.
So it's the addictions, the self-destruction, are all related to a lack of love. But I can tell you the solution. I learned it from the suicidal teenager I was helping. See, there's a difference between liking somebody or what they're doing. And
child.
Our childhood is stored up in our bodies.
Yes.
And although we can repress it, we can never alter it. Our intellect can be deceived, our feelings manipulated, and our body tricked with medication. But someday the body will present its bill, for it is as incorruptible as a child, who while still whole in spirit will accept no compromises, and it will not stop tormenting us until we stop evading the truth.
Yeah, it's an energy game. It's an energy game. The energy is going to get expressed one way or another.
And this is related to self-healing, too. There's
yes.
a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Bill Bengston, but he wrote a book called The Energy Cure.
Absolutely.
He has cured people and mice with his hands, with energy. And I've had injuries. I don't know if I mentioned it in this book, Olga Worrell, the healer mystic. See, again, when I'm a non-believer, I'm at a holistic medical conference. She's invited to be a speaker. My wife says, honey, she's a healer. You've injured your leg training for the marathon. Ask her to help you. I said, honey, this is nuts. I can't believe it. So my wife goes over to Olga and says, would you come over and help my husband? She comes over, put her hand.
Yes.
And although we can repress it, we can never alter it. Our intellect can be deceived, our feelings manipulated, and our body tricked with medication. But someday the body will present its bill, for it is as incorruptible as a child, who while still whole in spirit will accept no compromises, and it will not stop tormenting us until we stop evading the truth.
Yeah, it's an energy game. It's an energy game. The energy is going to get expressed one way or another.
And this is related to self-healing, too. There's
yes.
a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Bill Bengston, but he wrote a book called The Energy Cure.
Absolutely.
He has cured people and mice with his hands, with energy. And I've had injuries. I don't know if I mentioned it in this book, Olga Worrell, the healer mystic. See, again, when I'm a non-believer, I'm at a holistic medical conference. She's invited to be a speaker. My wife says, honey, she's a healer. You've injured your leg training for the marathon. Ask her to help you. I said, honey, this is nuts. I can't believe it. So my wife goes over to Olga and says, would you come over and help my husband? She comes over, put her hands on my leg. It was like 2 hot irons. Within 5 minutes, I was, cured of my injury and no pain and no trouble walking.
That's a miracle. And it's not a miracle, Bernie, because she healed your leg. What's a miracle to me, honestly, is how many, and you and I can both attest this, synchronistic moments. How many moments we had, like Tony, where the A train didn't come. I can't count the number of times that's happened in my life.
That's when you're living your life and choosing life. So
that's right.
Helping others. One of the stories in the book, which fits that. Well, a couple of them.
They all fit that, Bernie.
One was with Christmas, so I'll mention that too. It was a quickie.
All right.
The couple who were coming home from the West Coast after leaving, discharged from the service.
I love this story.
And they're going,
the Pontiac story. Go on.
Yeah. So they're, the car, every time they come to a hill, starts having trouble. No mechanic can tell them what it is. So they decide, see, to me, this is the key. We'll drive at night so we won't bother people. See, they're giving up, in a sense, their tourist vacation trip home to be nice to other people. And then in the middle of the night, nowhere in in Nevada, they come to a hill with a car behind them, so they pull off the road, and the car stops, which scared them. But the guy comes over and says, "You have a Pontiac Le Mans. I'm one of the original designers. I know what's wrong with your car. There's a tube sucking on the gas. I'll fix it for you." And he climbs underneath, sticks a pencil in the tube, and they have a wonderful trip home. But if they didn't give a damn about anybody else, they would have driven during the day and never met this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other was that little girl who I forgot where they moved to, but she learned that Santa Claus, if you put your empty shoes out, on Christmas Eve, Santa Claus fills them. And she puts her shoes out on Christmas Eve. Nobody else in the family knows. And she tells them in the morning, and the parents are thinking, oh, my God, she's going to find her empty shoes, and she'll be so upset. They open the door, and the shoes are filled with chocolate and all kinds of goodies. And it's like, oh, my God, how did that happen?
I love it.
Well, the landlord of the building saw the shoes and filled them. But again, it's not a coincidence. They're living their rhythm, so to speak, in their life, and it all happens.
Well, and this is what I think is most challenging, and I'll just raise my hand here and say the challenge is to learn to trust.
Yeah.
And look, I was raised Catholic, and the God that I was raised with was not benevolent and loving. I know it's supposed to be, but that's not how it was represented by the well-meaning nuns. I'm not. No,
I understand.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
But at this point, I recognize that there's a part of my own belief structure, the way that I was raised, that I'm often having to negotiate in order to allow for this energy, if you will. This grace, maybe is the word. I don't know what the word is.
The faith. See, how would you introduce yourself to God? You get to heaven, and you're on the admission line. See, I'm on the board of directors there, so I see this happen all the time. You get to the head of the line. They say, you're next. How do you want to be introduced? What would you say?
Oh, I don't know. You put me on this, and I'm not at a loss for words ever.
No, I mean, if you're standing there, don't know what to say, they say, come back when you know who you are.
That's right.
But see, the answer that gets you in is not, it's me, I'm on a radio show, I'm a doctor, I'm a mother. That's separation from the divine.
Yeah.
When you say to God, hey, your kid's here, or it's you, God says, come on in. And I'll tell you, you want to know what I heard from a kid who must have been loved? High school students, believe me, are into suicide, not life. And so when I asked this of a group of high school students, one of them raised his hand. I said, what is it? He said, tell God his replacement is here. I love that. That's
beautiful.
A kid, you see, who has the self-esteem and self-worth and isn't afraid to step out and be different.
Yeah. Well, there's a perspective that you more than speak about. I'm going to be honest, Bernie, you embody it, where it's a kind of vantage point where you re-enchant life. I mean, that's a goal for me, by the way. I'm really working consciously to re-enchant life, to allow myself to be more open, and then in that context, everything's a miracle. Whereas there was a time in my life where I was very narrowly focused, and in that moment, yes, they were anomalies. Nothing was a miracle. It's the psychological term often is schema, and I would actually filter out things to fit my my narrow perception of reality. And the last, I'd say, 10 years, and of course, all of it is predicated, at least in my experience, by some kind of breakdown, right? There was some crack in the wall of my personal composure, how I held my world together,
right?
Which happened with a divorce and a death and a this and a that, and we know that.
Yeah.
Which cracked me open.
You see,
go ahead.
The key to me, I often ask people, what mottos do you live by? Because I grew up with love and mottos that would help me survive.
Yeah.
And then people started saying, excuse me, you didn't ask us what mottos we're dying by.
That's it.
It never occurred to me, and that's why I got on a lot of famous talk shows, so people could criticize and yell at me. Not the audience, you know what I mean, but other health professionals.
Well, again, it's fear. It's a story that they're tied to that isn't serving them, but they don't know how to give it up.
Let me give you a sentence.
Go ahead.
Think about this. See, what if the nuns had said to you what the founder of Science of Mind, Religious Science, his name just...
Ernest Holmes.
Ernest Holmes, thank you.
Yep.
I love him. But he said in his book, what if Jesus was the only normal person who ever lived?
Yeah.
I love that.
Beautiful.